If you're training indoors, should you cut the duration of time down in comparison to what you do outside? Let's take a look at this good question. I recently received this question from a client who does a lot of training indoors this time of year because of the inclement weather outdoors. When it comes to a stationary bicycle or taking your bike and putting it on a Zwift Wahoo kicker combination, whether you're using one of the kinetic fluid trainers, whether you're using free spinning rollers, maybe not so much rollers based on what we're going to talk about here today, but when you're dealing with a bicycle that's on what we refer to as a magneto, you've got that heavy flywheel that's pressing against the wheel, or you're on like the Wahoo kicker where it's actually adding resistance electronically from the inside of the hub. When you are riding indoors, as a general rule of thumb, we recommend that you cut the duration in half to what you would normally do outside. So if you normally are going to do a 60-minute bike ride outdoors, we would say convert that to 30 minutes indoors. And I wanted to elaborate as to why. When you're riding outdoors, you have tailwinds, you have downhills, you have stop signs, you have red lights, you have things that interrupt. When you're riding on the stationary trainer and you have that load on the rear wheel, or again on one of the electronic wattage type devices, you have that constant load on the body at all times. Now, what I find very interesting is I've been doing this at the time of this recording for 38 years. In our endurance division, we see a high level of burnout and a lot of overtraining symptoms when people train indoors because of this exact subject. Stop and think about it. When you jump on a bike that's has the magneto load on it, what it's doing is it's keeping that constant pressure. You get no reprieve. If you lighten up on the pedals for just a half a second, you notice how quickly you lose speed. That's the best example I can give you, that when you go outdoors, you could stop pedaling and you can keep coasting, especially if you have a tailwind or you're on a downhill. You don't have that luxury when you're indoors. So when you're on the stationary bike, now the reason why I said not so much with the free spinning rollers, because the rollers themselves, unless you've got a turbofan that you've got attached to it, you're pretty much just free spinning. So you don't have the same amount of load that you have when you've got that flywheel pushing against the rear wheel, or you've got the electrical wattage that's making it difficult to pedal. What if we go and we look at the treadmill? Would we want to cut the amount of time that you run outdoors down when you run in? So for example, if you run an hour outdoors, should you run only 30 minutes on the treadmill indoors? And the answer, ironically, is no. And the reason why is because the treadmill itself, you've got a motor that is driving the belt. The motor itself is creating your speed. All you've got to do is jump on and try to keep up. I want to make sure that you're very clear on the difference between that. When we're on a stationary trainer with the bicycle, you're creating the power. You're creating the amount of watts as you offset the resistance that's being applied to you. Now, you could say, excuse me. Now, you could say when you are on a treadmill, if you've got it on a big incline, yes, you're having to offset that load of incline, but you have to remember, you're only trying to keep up. You're not actually creating the speed. You're not offsetting the load of the hill. It doesn't mean that doing the inclines on the treadmill, it's not that they're not productive, but it's a completely different set of power. When let's just say an even number, let's say you're running a 7-minute mile on flat land. It takes a lot of power out of your legs to be able to run a 7-minute mile on a 4% grade of a hill. If I take the treadmill and I increase the incline, the treadmill motor is producing the speed. All you've got to do is lean forward and be able to keep the leg turnover going. Yes, it requires power, it requires leg turnover, it requires functional movement, aerobic capacity, but you're not generating the power. You're just literally trying to keep from getting pushed off the treadmill. That's why we always say you cannot draw a parallel between hill repeats outdoors with hill repeats on the treadmill. Those are two completely different energy systems, and there's two completely different physiological outcomes that will be a byproduct of the time you spend running. So when these questions come in, this is the type of stuff I always love to be able to answer, because your questions tell me that you're paying attention. The number of questions that come in every week continue to escalate. I really appreciate that. It tells me you guys are getting more comfortable with this platform. This channel is all designed about answering your questions. Just like these questions here today, they've come from both DMs and emails, comments here on YouTube, and I want to again thank you for doing so. If you happen to be new, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications because we do put out a new video every day here on YouTube. If you haven't seen our resource page, please go to the description box below. We've got a plethora of resources we'd love to share with you for free. If you happen to have a question, please feel free to send it to me. You can do so by sending it to contact@coachrob.com. We'll convert your question into a video and we'll make sure we get it out here on the YouTube platform so everybody can benefit. Thank you for watching today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.